Hey everyone, this is Isaac here, and welcome back to Isaac Reviews 2022. The original Night at the Museum trilogy is a franchise that, back in the day, wasn't looked at too fondly by critics. But upon me watching the trilogy, I can safely say that the movies are perfectly serviceable. The first one was definitely the best one, with plenty of funny jokes, a great score, and the actors doing really well, especially Robin Williams as Teddy Roosevelt. Man, I still miss Robin Williams. My mom actually met him in the 90s, so I'd say that's pretty impressive. 3 years later, we got the sequel, Battle of the Smithsonian. I can't begin to imagine the back pain Amy Adams must have had from carrying this movie, but other than that and some fun action scenes, the CGI hasn't aged all that well, even if the cinematography is pretty good. The logic from the first movie is more or less thrown out the window here, and it's hard to feel worried for these characters since they're all made out of wax and thus can't die. And last but certainly not least for the live-action trilogy, we have Secret of the Tomb. While slightly weaker than the original, I'd still consider it to be better than Battle of the Smithsonian, since even with some weak jokes and these two being pretty annoying, it was still a fun watch with some fun action, an excellent score, and some genuinely high stakes for this franchise. And I'd be lying if I said Teddy's goodbye to Larry didn't squeeze a few tears out of me, especially since this movie came out not too long after Robin Williams' death. And that seemed like it'd be the end of the franchise, but as I've learned from doing my reviews, there's 4 main subjects I always have to explain at one point or another. Kevin Feige has a fetish for indie directors, Warner Bros. Discovery is greedy, DreamWorks fell off but now they're good again, and of course, nostalgia is profitable. We've seen a lot of the latter this year, but outside of Top Gun Maverick, a lot of these nostalgia-heavy movies have just been not very good. And this brings us to the subject of today's review, Kahmunrah Rises Again, which Disney completely neglected to advertise until like a week before it came out. I know it's a Disney Plus exclusive movie and those don't tend to be very good, but come on Disney. First Strange World and now this? It's like you want these movies to fail. But whatever, it's on Disney Plus now, I watched it, and honestly, it was pretty bad. Now yes, I'll admit that on paper, this movie could have worked. Night at the Museum definitely seems like a franchise that could lend itself well to the medium of animation, and I like the concept of Larry's son Nick taking over his job, since Nick was familiar with how the Tablet of Kahmunrah brought the museum artifacts to life. But in execution, Kahmunrah Rises Again is as generic as humanly possible. Nick has a crush at school he's too nervous to ask out, he has a hobby that he worries no one will like, and he feels bad about himself because the villain's plan seems to be succeeding, and he needs to be reminded that he'll always have his friends by his side, or something along those lines. Speaking of the villain, Kahmunrah, look how they massacred my boy. In Battle of the Smithsonian, he was intimidating and felt like a legitimate threat. Here though, he's all quirky and silly and constantly spouts out cringy jokes and pop culture references. It doesn't even make sense for him since not only was he canonically dead for thousands of years, but Larry yeeted him back into the underworld at the end of the second movie. So why all of a sudden did he adopt this r/fellow kids-esque character? Better yet, how did he escape the underworld? Why is he back in the human world? This movie sure as hell doesn't care, and maybe I shouldn't either, but still. To circle back to a point I previously made, I said Night at the Museum seems like a franchise that could lend itself well with animation, and this movie does not do a very good job in that regard. It's nothing unsightly or anything, and it's mostly pretty smooth, but the character animation can get kinda choppy at some points, not to mention Nick himself looks like he belongs in Rick and Morty. I mean, the rest of the character designs are okay, and some of the backgrounds look nice, but the character animation definitely could have been better. So, if I've been trashing on this movie so much, what's keeping it above some of this year's worst outputs? Well, first off, I'll actually admit that the voice acting here was pretty good. Sure, the voices for Kahmunrah and Seth were pretty irritating. Like, what was up with Seth's accent? Was it supposed to be Arabic, Russian, Transylvanian? Make up your mind. And Thomas Lennon is definitely no Robin Williams, although really, can anyone hold a candle to the guy? But other than that, the rest of the voice actors honestly sounded fine, my personal favorite being Kieran Sequoia as Sacagawea, plus Steve Zahn honestly did a great job at replicating Owen Wilson. That, and I'll admit that the movie's heart seemed to be in the right place, plus the climax was kinda fun, but other than that, there's nothing all that special about Kahmunrah Rises Again. It's boring, it's generic, the title villain is obnoxious, the animation is mediocre, and the humor, while it could squeeze out a chuckle here and there, severely lacked the same charm as the live-action trilogy. Whether you like those movies or not, there's no point in watching this. For newcomers, just stick with them. All I can say is that if Disney didn't care to market this movie, why should I care that it ended up sucking? Join me next time for my review of Avatar: The Way of Water. After 13 years, we're finally getting a sequel to the highest grossing film of all time that a lot of us kinda forgot about outside of the amazing visual effects. And with this new one, I gotta say, the underwater CGI looks phenomenal. I may need to reserve my judgment on the script, and the 3-hour runtime seems a bit daunting, but hopefully it'll be able to impress me outside of the already impressive visuals. Anyways, thanks for watching this episode. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!